The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
It's time to go on the mat. The Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Ford and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
Welcome to On the Mat. I am Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, joined by a man that Felix Grundy wishes he would have met. That's Doug Van Gelder.
You know, that's always an interesting concept. Don't you think, going back into time to meet people that you would like to meet?
I love the concept of time travel, just period.
It's fantastic.
I just love it.
It's fantastic to even dream of it.
But yet, Scott was talking about this last show, that you have this, what's it called, that the only history is when your life starts?
Solipsism.
Yeah. And so it's kind of counter to that, though, in a way.
Yeah, it would be.
But
you should be able to do it in your mind if you're a true solipsist.
So... Who would you want to meet? Who would you want to meet? Do you have some people in mind that would be interesting, other than Felix Grundy, who is
I think
the namesake
Christopher
of
Columbus would be one of the first.
Why
people.
Christopher Columbus?
Because I think that would be fascinating to set off into some place that you don't even know where you're going.
Yeah, well...
We're going that way. We're not going that way, guys. We're going this way. And that took some real commitment.
Real chutzpah to do that.
Yeah.
How about Scotty? Who do you want to meet? You got a tag guy or someone with a license plate that you'd like to meet?
If there was anybody, I guess I would really want to meet more than anybody else in the world. It'd still have to be John Wayne.
John Wayne?
John Wayne.
Huh.
Yeah.
Born in
You
Iowa.
like whiskey, too?
Wouldn't turn it down.
John Wayne, huh?
Yeah.
So
That's
Christopher
an interesting
Columbus and
choice.
John Wayne.
How about you?
Thomas Jefferson. I don't think there's anyone that I'd want to meet more than him, just because he's a fascinating guy and Declaration of Independence.
He had a
and
way
all
with
these
words,
things.
didn't he?
Yeah, he did, but it was all written words, and I think he actually wrote some of his what do you call it, the State of the Union speeches, and handed them out instead of actually giving a speech. So he was pretty quiet, but was
State of the Union essay.
yeah. And he knew a lot. He knew a lot about everything, and I think he'd be a fun guy to just sit down with for a week and pick his brain.
I didn't know that about him, and I don't know if I've ever even, what was some of the concepts he had in his except his inaugural addresses or whatever.
What were they?
Yeah.
I don't. I just know that particular piece of history, and I think it's fascinating that
I'm gonna look into that just to see.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. If he was the chief writer of the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah. And he founded Virginia University and Louisiana Purchase and the Lewis and Clark expedition. He was behind all that. And interestingly, the three things on his tombstone, he didn't put third president of the United States. He didn't put anything mention about that. So I don't know if that resonated with him, but I think maybe at the time it's such a new concept, being president, that didn't feel like it warranted being on his tombstone.
And that is a deepening. We're right at the time right now where that's pretty significant. Why are people doing all that's going on just to become president of the United States?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing to think about. But as we talk about what's current, a guy that has been blowing me away with how knowledgeable he is about the sport of wrestling, and one of those guys that you can actually have a conversation where you can throw out some names. They're like, I haven't heard of that guy. But you can have a back and forth with a guy that you know. His name's Jim Witt. That guy knows a lot about wrestling. His kid is involved in the sport, and he can go toe-to-toe with the best of them.
He immersed himself in the...
He has.
Cool.
He's gone back and learned about Kerry Colott and what's going on current, and he knows about Tony Ramos and who's coming up in the scene. And Jim Witt, of course, class of 95, he was a classmate of mine and your son's, and...
I had some special time with Jim up in the Unidome when he was serving a little suspension.
with your son, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And we've discussed this a little bit, but what a fascinating era we had growing up in the sport of wrestling at Cedar Falls High School. I'm convinced that's a big part of why I'm still part of this, was because you saw that and you saw the characters and these guys were just fun, and they loved the sport. And did they get in trouble off the mat a little bit? Yeah, but when you have the Whelans and the Niederts and the Greg Halsers and the Gabe Hurleys and all these guys, I mean, the list goes on and on.
And you can tie a lot of that back, goes back clear back to the Wahawk Club.
Sure does.
You know, that's Cedar Falls invaded that, I'd say, for a while.
Yeah.
And then took over the Metro wrestling scene.
Yeah.
You know, Budke.
I mean, I don't know if the Whelans were in that, but you just had
Yeah, I don't know if they were or not either, but
you just had a fun era.
Eichhorn.
So I came at the right time, because if I would have come during this time, I don't know if I would have been as drawn to it, because you got me into it and got me into it at the right time, and we went to all these meets on the road in high school, and then we went to college meets, and you took
We
me to
had a
my
lot of
first
adventures.
nationals. We did, and that's why going back to Columbus, there's stuff you can discover. It's just in your mind, and it doesn't have to be a piece of land. You can discover a lot about even the sport of wrestling and what goes into it. And I think that one thing that resonated with me with Jim Witt, talking about him, is that he's excited about the Big Ten Network schedule. He's got that marked down so he can watch all these meets. And I think that's a great standard for where the sport is right now, is that we get excited about what's the potential. And you mark these things down and you watch it on Big Ten Network, and you have ESPN3, and you have all of the schools that actually have the broadcasts of the wrestling meet. I just think it's an exciting time with technology, that if you're willing to go out and access it, wrestling is accessible. It's not in the mainstream where you want it, but if you're a diehard fan, you have outlets to be able to find these great meets. And
that's getting greater every day.
Yeah, it really is. And the resources, especially, I tell you, track wrestling.
Just all the electronic media that's out there.
Yeah. But I mean, even with this show, think about where we've come. Jason Bryant putting it on Matt Talk Online, and we have that outlet to be able to have this archived for as long as the internet's around. It's just a great way to be able to preserve a lot of these iconic figures in a way that's unique and fresh. So the more we can get the Jim Witts of the world thinking about wrestling, and part of it's because his son is wrestling and doing well, but I think it's great that
it's up to him to share that time with his son.
It is. And
that's great.
But he's taken him to the Olympic trials. He's taken him to the West Gym at University of Northern Iowa. He's going to take him to a dual meet at Carver Hawkeye Arena. And I think the more you can touch it and you feel it and you're a part of it, the more it just embodies you. And I think that's what happened when we went to that 95 NCAA tournament. You're just around and you're like, it's almost bigger than anything you could imagine going to that NCAA wrestling tournament, because I'd never seen anything like it. 3 days in a row, 6 sessions, and you just keep going to these great meets. And it was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Mr. Van Gelder. We got 2 more days, Joe.
Exactly. Exactly. So we've delved into the past. We look forward to what's happening. We have another one of our series of one guest where we get to dive deep, and Eric Akin is our guest today. And if you followed the sport in any capacity, whether it's collegiate or international, you know the name Eric Akin because he wrestled a long time. He did wrestle
36. A long time.
He did.
And I always get confused about when he was actually at Iowa State.
Yeah, he was. His senior year was 1994.
Okay.
And started there in 1990 as a redshirt, and then went through 94. But a guy that can't get enough, and still involved in it with the club scene, and his kid is coming through, so we get to talk to him.
And that's in Kansas?
It's in Kansas, yeah. I believe his dad started the club. So we get a chance to talk with Eric Akin, and a colorful guy. I don't know when you listen to him, and I'm prepping everyone for this because I hope you'll listen because he's a really fascinating guy. I don't know how he's from Kansas because he sounds like he's California cool surfer. And see what you think when he's on the show, because he has that way about him. And
there's nothing wrong with Kansas cool.
No, there's nothing wrong with Kansas cool. I'm just saying he doesn't sound like he's from Kansas. He sounds like
Is he supposed to sound like Dorothy of the Wizard of Oz or what?
Well, he's not a female. But I don't know that comparison, but he just sounds like should be out with Stephen Neal surfing. That's what he sounds like. So tell me what you think.
Be right in there with the Schultz boys too?
Yeah, with the Schultz boys and all that crew.
Maybe we're onto a genetic thing here.
It could be. So
just talk that way if you're a great wrestler.
Yeah. So stick around for Eric Akin. He's going to be on the program for 2 segments. Get a chance to talk to him. And I don't know if you have ideas on who you'd like to hear from, I have some ideas on, as we go into the season, we'll probably maybe go 3 or 4 more of these lengthy interviews.
I'd like to talk with Joe Russell again sometime.
Joe Russell?
Yep. I always like talking with him. He's pretty Midwest cool, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, he was from Wyoming originally?
Oregon.
Oregon, yeah.
Oregon. We had his brother Dan on. I don't know when the last time we've had Joe on the show. So
might have been back when Kent and I were doing it.
It could be. And it would be fun to resurrect that. That would be a fun interview.
Still at George Mason?
Still at George Mason. So it would be interested to talk to him and see what's on his radar. Because, hey, Division I college programs aren't easy to come by anymore. And it's harder and harder to get that job in a Division I program. So as we look to what's happening in the D1 landscape, he's part of what's driving that right now.
I'd like to hear from Papalizio, too.
Yeah. He'd be a fun one too. Just go in depth. So we got a couple there that we have. So if you listen and want to give us a call at the Gable Museum or email us at dgmstaff@nwhof.org. If you have a person, male or female, that you'd like to hear from and we can go in depth with, would love to hear any suggestions. And I know on my radar. I know as we get closer to the season, 2 people that I'm going to have on the show, Michael Kelly and Nick Moore, who is a 4-time state wrestling champion, happens to be in the Cedar Falls area. They were both at University of Iowa at the same time, and they're going to be helping out with the Cedar Falls High School program. So I think it's great that you have high-level talent in that Cedar Falls program. Think of what you have right there with that pipeline. You have Michael Kelly, who was at Iowa. You have Nick Moore, who was at Iowa. Brad Penrith, who was an NCAA champion.
Yeah, I was going to say Penrith's still helping out up at here.
He'll still help out. And so you're going to have people to look to on how you get to the top. You certainly are going to have that. And so it'll be fun to get those guys in studio and chat with them and do a little bit of a preview on what Cedar Falls High School wrestling looks like. And another guy that we haven't had in a while, maybe 5-6 years. I don't know that I've interviewed him, Jay Llewellyn. We need to get him and talk to him about the future of Waterloo East wrestling. So we'll do that more and talk about the local high school programs and what that's going to entail. And Jay is another guy that follows the sport fanatically.
He's the one that sent us that thing about Eric Sinclair, wasn't it?
No, I sent that.
You sent that out?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought Jay responded to it, though, or something.
He did, yeah. And that's a great story to bring up. I don't know if you remember the gist of it, but just to rehash what happened there, we had been talking about Eric Sinclair, and we had one of his opponents contact me and say, hey, listen to the show, and said I was his last loss before he had that string until he got beat by Ironside in the state semifinals his senior year. He was that last loss, and he went through how he survived Eric Sinclair's headlock and got through it and went on, and he was so exhausted from that. So I think one of these shows we need to just maybe read that email because it was pretty interesting.
That was
his take. I thought it was one of the best stories that I had heard about how his experience in wrestling and how he still follows it. So let's make sure to do that. Season's coming up, Doug. I know that we focus a lot on college. The international's over for a while, but I know World Team Trials will kick off here with the non-Olympic weights. They're going to have a World Championship coming up. But as you look forward to what's going to happen this season, what kind of things are going to excite you about?
Well, I'll tell you what. I am going to go to Dubuque and see TJ's team.
Good for
you. I am
you.
going to do it. I don't know. I kind of got lost in a lot of things last winter, and I'm going to do it this year.
Good.
So
I want to go over there,
I'm looking
too.
forward to that. So maybe we can make a road trip out of it.
Let's do that for sure. I want to get over to that. And it is interesting as we talk about the D3 product and what's happening there is that you're having a lot of programs take what the University of Iowa did with that outdoor meet, getting 42,000 plus, and they're packaging that themselves. Cornell College is doing that. Upper Iowa is going to do that. I know that one of the popular things to do at different programs is to actually have a wrestling meet on a stage, so in a theater setting.
Like a performance, yeah.
Performance art. And I like that that's catching on. because once Iowa did it, that set the tone for everyone. They said, hey, if they can do it, people are running with it, and they're saying, let's do an outdoor wrestling
What a fantastic idea.
It is. I think it's a great way.
I can't believe how that all came together last year.
It's beyond
Thank God
words.
for global warming.
Well, you can say that. I have a different view on that, but hey, it was outdoors, and we had an opportunity on November 14th to have a 65-degree day or whatever else it was, and then the next week it snowed.
Yeah,
And,
it was right there.
It was pretty amazing how that worked.
That confirmed that it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, and it worked out for the best. So we have those opportunities. I think Northern Iowa should get on board with maybe not necessarily an outdoor meet, but you have the Gallagher Blue Dorn Performance Arts Center there. I think it'd be awesome to have a wrestling meet.
I can remember in high school that we used to do a lot of matches on stages.
Yeah. The Western Immediate, they did that here locally.
Yeah.
They used to do the stage in junior high.
When I was coaching, that was,
The problem for you, though, is where would you sit? Because everyone knows where you sit at the West Gym, and you're that presence, and everyone wants to see you.
I would sit in one of the box seats up above.
Oh, on the side? So you would
The
be...
Hail Caesar thing,
Yeah,
I get into that.
The Caesar? Yeah. Just be careful, because that's how Lincoln got shot, though, too.
Well, I know. I'm thankful I've got a pretty thick skull.
Yeah. Well, we'll just we'll make sure there's security around you.
Yeah.
Led by me and Scott.
I'd do something to make him mad, like I did when I tossed eggs at Jerry Rubin.
Well, you can do it however you want. You have immunity in the fandom of this sport. That's for sure. But other than that, we talked about excitement. I know we talked about outdoor meets. Is there a couple guys that you want to see compete this year and looking forward to?
Is Snyder going to go a whole season, or is he going to?
Oh no, he'll go limited schedule. He'll wrestle the big duels and then wrestle Big Tens and Nationals. So you might see him 10 or 12 times.
He's going to stay at heavyweight, you think?
Yeah, he'll stay at heavyweight. No reason to
come back and defend that title.
Yeah, and I think that's an obvious one. Of course, you want to see an Olympic champion for another 2 years.
Jaden Cox going to be able to stay down at 197?
I don't see why not. He wrestled 189 at the Olympics.
Okay.
Might as well. I think he'll stay at 197. No reason to go up to heavyweight, although that would be a fun matchup between Cox and Snyder if that ever materialized. See if they might just agree on a weigh-in to both meet at 220 and see what happens. But that would be a fun matchup at some point.
It would be.
Yeah.
Those two trained together, it'd be hard to tell how long they could reign as world champions.
Well, the outlet would be the All-Star meet. You could have them wrestle there where it doesn't count. Just do it for the sport.
It'd be a heck of a draw.
It would be. It could, because you
Are you
wouldn't
listening out there? A heck of a draw.
You wouldn't have that opportunity any other time to have it right after an Olympic year.
Yeah.
I would think about going out to see that.
Where's it at?
I think it's in Ohio this year. So.
Road trip.
Yeah, road trip. Got to close this segment out, but stick around. We have Eric Akin, 4-time All-American and World Team member, next on the mat. 1650, The Fan.
1650 The Fan, KCNZ.
We are back on the mat, 1650 The Fan. I am Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, along with Doug Van Gelder. Man, this is going to be a fun guest. Iowa State 4-time All-American, made a world team in 1999, made it to the finals of the Olympic trials in 1996 and 2000, and a guy that loves the sport because he's still in the sport. His name's Eric Akin, and he's with us. How are you, Eric?
I'm doing good, Kyle. Thank you.
Hey, great to have you on. I know that they're going to have a non-Olympic weights world team trials coming up in November. Any chance you're going to throw in and compete in those?
I might lobby for a ticket. I'll take the front row.
Yeah, because you win a while. I mean, you win all the way to 36. Is it because you just love the sport so much?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of reasons why I went longer. When I got closer to 36, I had that last year. I was like, well, I'm going to do it because Dave Schultz was 36 at his last competition, and he was a mentor and an idol of mine, and that had a little bit to do with it. I just thought that was kind of cool, but really I did it because my body still felt good, and I was still wrestling good, and I loved the sport, and You know, one thing I couldn't get away from was competition. I loved competition. I loved competing in front of people, especially big crowds, and just that feeling you get from competing and winning a match or coming back and winning or beating someone you're not supposed to. It's just a feeling that people get in sports that you can't describe it and you can't replace it.
So what is it about that? Because Brett Favre went in and out of retirement for a while, and I think you said at one point that you could understand why walking away is so hard. What is it about that part of it where you get to be in front of thousands of people and you get to compete that's so addicting that you can't give up on so easy?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like an emotional, like a very good emotional feeling rush that you get from just competing in front of a bunch of people and doing your best and being entertaining and exciting. You know, I always tried to be exciting as I could, and probably one of the things I feared the most when I got ready to compete wasn't win or lose, but I didn't want to go out there and be boring in front of the best wrestling fans in the world at the Olympic trials or the World Team Trials or at an Iowa duel against Iowa State or any event like that. I really tried to make myself rise to the occasion because I felt the responsibility to my sport and to the fans to be exciting and make the sport promotable.
And I thank you for that.
I tried my best.
Yeah.
It was always fun watching you.
Yeah, you did, and you had that. And my question would be is where did that transition? Did you have that early on where it was about wins and losses, and when you get a little bit older, it's more about, hey, let's just put a great performance on and wins and losses don't matter as much? Or did you always have that mentality?
Well, at a younger age, you know, you want to win really bad. You know, you're young in college, you want to be ranked, you want to get that All-American status or win the national title, and it really means a lot to you then to get your name in the history books. But as you get older and they're already in there, you already have 4-time All-American or national champ or whatever you've done, you're still nervous, you're still excited, but it's way more relaxing. And you know, by the time I went to the Olympic trials in 2000, you know, I remember standing back in the tunnel right before the challenge tournament finals, and there was music going on in the arena, and the crowd was stomping and going nuts and getting all excited for the first match. And then the national anthem came on. I just stayed in the tunnel in my singlet. I just remember being back there thinking about everything that I could that had taken place and transpired in my wrestling career, from being a little kid in the back seat and my parents driving me to wrestling in the college NCAA finals, or, you know, I just let it all stack up and play like a highlight reel, and I just let it motivate me. And I just, you know, I told myself, this is real life gladiator stuff, and this is only going to happen a few times in my life. I'm going to soak it up.
And having that opportunity, not many people get to be on the elevated stage and do that. It sounds like you have a real grasp on how big that is and how monumental. Do you think other wrestlers have that ability to translate what you just said there and really appreciate the moment? Because I don't see them being able to do that. It seems like they're so locked in, they can't get outside themselves of that wins and loss.
Yeah, it takes a lot of maturity. You know, as you get older, you start to look at it different. It's about perspective, and your losses start to become wins, and there's really no such thing as a loss, because if it's something that makes you try harder and set more goals and focus better and make yourself closer to the Lord and just be an all-around better person and an athlete, then it's a win. And I think most of my losses did that to me.
On the line with Eric Akin, 4-time All-American for Iowa State, was a world team member in 1999, made it to the finals of the Olympic trials in 1996 and 2000, competed till he was 36 years old. But going way back, you were part of a club that your dad started. Is that correct? Your dad started a wrestling club, and I'm assuming that's how you got involved in wrestling.
Yeah, he was involved in some wrestling clubs in Johnson County here in Overland Park, Kansas, suburb of Kansas City. And after a few years, when I went to high school, he started a club called the East Kansas Wrestling Club, which kind of brought in kids from all different schools and clubs. And his idea was steel sharpens steel, and we have to train together. Even if we're going to meet each other in the state finals, we got to get better together in the summer, the spring, the fall, maybe go to the same high school so we make each other sharper. And over the years, that club's produced a lot of good wrestlers from D1 All-Americans like Zach Roberson was a national champ at Iowa State. Sean Bunch at Edinburgh, he was a runner-up. Joe Johnson at Iowa. Tanner Gardner at Stanford. All those guys were All-Americans. And 3 of us made the Olympic trial finals. And the club continues to produce young champions. And I control the club today, or I'm part of it. Actually, I have another guy that's kind of running it because I'm a high school coach now. But I definitely plan on having that club make my high school team the state champs, just like it has in the past wherever it's been located.
And where's the actual practices take place? Do you have a facility?
Yeah, I'm the head wrestling coach at a private Catholic school named St. Thomas Aquinas, and it's a really good school in Kansas. It's one of the top academic schools, and they won state last year in 7 different sports.
Oh, wow.
So they take their academics and their sports really seriously, and I'm proud to be there. The wrestling program was kind of down. The year before I went there, they had 3 wrestlers, and one of those guys graduated, and then I took the job, and a few kids followed me there, and I got a few more, blessed with a few more transfers and move-ins this year. Now I have like 10 kids that have wrestled in youth wrestling, for a good number of years, and I have 4 guys that probably have a legit shot at winning the state title this year. So in my second year, it's already getting a little bit exciting.
What do these kids want out of a program, and not necessarily want, but what do they need out of a youth wrestling program to get them to that high bar and to really get the best out of themselves?
Well, I think what they need is they need a good program, a coach, a club that helps develop fundamentals and skills. Wrestling's basically a sport of fundamentals and skills, like how to walk, how to ice skate, how to shuffle, how to move your feet, how to stay in a stance, how to keep your head up. Just little fundamental basic things. And then once those things are perfected or at a certain point, then you can start to teach kids maneuvers and holds. And I think a lot of people just start out kids, they're brand new to wrestling, and they bring them in. The first thing they teach them is a move. And you're kind of teaching someone to read, and you're starting out with like a 3-syllable word. So you got to break it down to the basics and develop fundamentals and skills. And then as they get older in high school and college and in the Olympic wrestlers, they're doing the same things, the same fundamentals and skills. They're drilling the same things that kids are in 5th grade should be drilling. The right maneuvers, the right fundamentals, the right skills. So it's really about approach, and do they have the right people approaching the right foundation to get them started and develop what they need.
On the line with Eric Akin, 4-time All-American for Iowa State. You ended up at Iowa State from Kansas. Why did that fit for you to come and be a Cyclone?
Well, I heard a lot about Iowa State when I was a kid. Back then, you didn't have all these different internet sites to watch wrestling and to learn. And nowadays, somebody can make up a move in Alaska, and someone in Florida can learn it in 1 hour later, And back then, it was just magazines and a lot of things you saw in USA Wrestling or amateur wrestling news. And Iowa State was one of the top powerhouses, and I wanted to wrestle for a team that was one of the top teams, and I wanted to have a tough road to make varsity. I went there with a tough guy in front of me, and I also wanted to compete in the state of Iowa because it was the mecca of wrestling, and maybe still is.
You glad you made that choice? Because you had a transition. It was Jim Gibbons was there initially, and then Bobby Douglas took over. What was that like, kind of having 2 coaches during that phase?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't change it for the world. It was the best choice for me, and I got to be coached by Jim Gibbons and his staff, Joe Gibbons, and some other guys, and Adam Darengowski, Kevin Jackson. They were all part of that staff, and then I was there for a redshirt year and 2 varsity years, and then Bobby Douglas came in, and it was a whole different school of thought, but also a school of excellence. And Bobby Douglas is like a Yoda. Some people are Jedis, but he's like Yoda, and he opened a lot of doors for me. He was the Olympic and world team coach at the time in like 92, 93, 94. He was all involved in that, 95. So I got a chance to go to all the world team camps then, the Olympic camp in 92, starting out then, and then 93. I got to go out there and train. I was training with Tom and Terry Brands, and that was the first year they won their worlds, I think, 93. And I got to be around all those guys and see all that stuff, and a lot of it was at Foxcatcher, so I got to experience Foxcatcher thing quite a bit, and it was awesome. Some people might shy away from having a transition, but I ate it up. It was just another wrestling brain for me to learn from, and I've learned from a lot of different guys.
Your senior year was 1994, and after that you went from Iowa State to the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, where Dan Gable oversaw that. You made the comment that when you left Iowa State and went to Hawkeye Wrestling Club, you went from being a boy to a man. What did that mean? That might have been a little bit of an exaggeration, but no knock on Iowa State. It was a great place to be, and it was. I just evaluated where I was and what I was doing and what my goals were, and I just kind of pinched myself one day and looked over at Iowa City and thought, man, Iowa State's probably one of the top 5 places to be in the world with Bobby Douglas and my workout partners and everything, the facility. But Iowa probably is the number 1 place in the whole United States to be if you're training for an Olympic spot. And it was 2 hours away. And I kind of just needed a spark. I just needed new motivation, and I was still getting after it and stuff. But, I was at Iowa State for 6 years because I redshirted, then I wrestled for 4, and then I stuck around 1 more. And then I went to Iowa for a little over 2 years. So when I got done there, I'd been through 8 years of college wrestling, first Iowa State and then Iowa. And my body really needed a break at that point. Right. And you were in the last phase of Gable's college career. What was that like being coached by him during the international portion, at least?
Oh, it was incredible. Just being in the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, and I was working for the university too, so it all worked out good and legal for me to be training with the wrestlers there and be in the Hawkeye Wrestling Club. And it was awesome to watch Gable in action and listen to him every day, talk before practice, and then to be there that last year, and he set that record. And there was a guy writing a book about it at the time, I think called Season on the Mat, and my family ended up getting to be in that book a little bit, and we saw all that stuff and witnessed it. And at the time, I knew it was history, but now I look back at it and I'm like, man, that was really history.
Well, because you made it to the finals of the '96 Olympic trials. Terry Brands did, and then Tom Brands won it. You had a lot of guys there that were at the high level. I'm assuming that had to be a unique dynamic competing against those guys every day.
Yeah, it really was. And when you're training together like that, you're so focused on yourself, and wrestling's an individual sport, and but at some point you look around and you realize, like, man, we are really pushing each other, and steel really does sharpen steel, and you get the team aspect of it too. You feel the people around you that care about your training and your goals, and you care about theirs, and you're pushing each other hard to get there.
And during that era, we talked about competing against those guys. You were the lightest weight. Is it hard to get competition and training partners? I'm assuming you would wrestle Terry in practice, but I don't know how much you guys would go at it live in a Hawkeye Wrestling Club practice.
Yeah, I wrestled him quite a bit, more than I wanted to.
Yeah.
But it was not hard for me to find a good workout partner in the Iowa Rim. As a matter of fact, there were days when I thought, man, I just kind of want an easy day. I want to get someone that I can just pound the whole time. and there was nobody in there. There was no one like that. I mean, the JV 118-pounder was Jesse Whitmer, and he was the NCAA champ. I mean, I call him JV, but he was behind Minna, and then Minna went up a weight, and then he steps in there and wins it, you know, and I mean, I just had guys like that pushing me all the time, and then at that point, I was cutting all the way down to 114 and a half, so I was trying to wrestle with guys like Minna and Jeff McGinnis and Mark Ironside and Doug Schwab, you know, and they all had 15 to 20 pounds on me, but it helped me out a lot. And then, I mean, if I was the same weight as them, you know, it would have been everything you can do to get a takedown or two in practice. But I was giving up weight to those guys, and obviously it really helped me a lot. It pushed me to where I needed to be that year or close to it.
Right. We have another segment with Eric Akin, and stick around. We have more with Eric Akin, 4-time All-American from Iowa State next on the mat, 1650 The Fan.
1650 The Fan, KCNZ.
We are back on the mat, 1650 The Fan. I'm Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, along with Doug Van Gelder. We've had a great first interview with Eric Akin. More with Eric Akin, 4-time All-American for Iowa State. Made a world team in 1999. Also made the finals of the Olympic trials in 96 and in 2000. And I want to make sure we get this in because you're a guy that loves the sport of wrestling. We're asking this of all of our guests in this particular segment. Your Mount Rushmore of wrestling. Who would be on Eric Akin's Mount Rushmore of wrestling? Go.
Gable, Smith, Cale Sanderson, and Jordan Burroughs.
Wow. You're pretty close to mine. I think I might put Lee Kemp in there at some spot, but you have the record for the fastest. Usually people have to think about that for at least a couple minutes, so you got that knocked out in 15 seconds. What is it about John Smith that you like?
Well, first of all, I don't know if 4 is enough to put on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling. There's been so many great champions, but
right.
John Smith is, I mean, what can you say about the guy? I could say he's probably the best ever. And I learned a lot watching him. When I was a kid, I was lucky to, my dad was one of the FILA referees for the United States. So I got to go watch some U.S. Opens through like junior high and the Olympic trials in '88 and some of the world team trials and things like that. And I would just learn so much watching John Smith. It was incredible, in the moves and stuff that he could do, and his scrambling abilities and his balance. And but what he did to win all the world titles that he won in 2 Olympics. I think he won 4 world titles, maybe 6.
Yeah, 4 world and 2 Olympic.
Yeah, and so he dominated for an incredible streak there. He won the Worlds, then he won the Olympics, then he won 3 more Worlds, then he won the Olympics.
Yeah.
And just to win one of those things. And when I went to the Worlds in '99, John Smith was one of the coaches, if not the head coach. I can't remember, but they let you pick your corner guys, and my first pick was John Smith. I said, I want John Smith in my corner. Who else would you want in your corner? He's won 4 of these things and 2 Olympics, and tactic-wise and just how wise he is. That's who I wanted there. But I remember after one of my matches, I think it was my 3rd match. I won my 3rd match in a row, and got my stuff, walked back to the locker room. John walked back to the locker room with me. I remember looking at him, and I said, man, you won 4 of these things. That's incredible. He just kind of shook his head, yeah. But I've always been amazed with him. And one of the first people my dad ever brought up here for a clinic when I was a kid was Leroy Smith. So he brought him up here a few times and had him do a few different camps for us, throughout a few years. So I started out learning a lot of Smith technique, a little bit of sucker drags and lows, a sweep single. His single was a little bit different than John's. So my technique groups actually started out Okie State influenced, but a lot of influences throughout the years after that.
Well, when I think of your career, I think of the success, but I also think the level of competition you had domestically, whether it was Stephen Abbas, Sammy Henson, you had Chad Zapital, you had Lou Roselli. The names go on and on. When you think about who you competed against, who was the guy that you felt like brought the best out of you when you stepped toe-to-toe with that guy? That'd
have to be Sammy the Bull Henson for sure.
Yeah.
he's the hardest guy I ever had to wrestle. He's the strongest guy I ever had to wrestle. He was an all-around wrestler. I mean, there was everything about him that you wish it wasn't true, you know. You wish he didn't train so hard. You wish he wasn't so strong. And he really he pushed me to a level to train that made me a better wrestler. And you know, I trained for him all the time. I wouldn't say we had some really close matches and lots of overtimes, and maybe wasn't my most exciting matches, but you know, that I did the best in. But he definitely, he was the guy I was thinking of when I was running on the treadmill, when I was sitting in the sauna, when I was lifting weights. He's the guy I wanted to beat, and I had him on their poster. You know, you gotta find haters. You gotta convince yourself they don't want you to win. You gotta put your opponent. You gotta make your opponent their poster boy. And I think Sammy did the same thing. Actually, we argued one time about we were at the Olympic Training Center and we were hanging out playing cards or whatever, a few of us, and me and Sammy started arguing that I said they want you to win. They want you to beat me, and he was like, no, they want you to beat me. Nuh-uh. And we actually got in a fight over who possessed more haters. But I think we both were kind of like that mentally. It motivates you if you think like that sometimes.
Oh, at the beginning of the first segment when we had you on, you talked about just the energy in a match that you go to the Olympic trials, and it's just like no other. The match I think of, and it's probably a top 10 match I've ever seen as far as that is concerned, is your final match to get to the finals of the Olympic trials against Stephen Abbas, when you came back and you pointed to your heart and you just really pulled out an amazing victory. When I bring up that match and you think back to that, how did you pull out a match against someone who was a superior wrestler?
I don't know. I just let it fly. I just went out there and I did my best. And it's one of those matches that I kind of remember almost everything from it. And, you know, Stephen Abbas was up and coming, and me and him wrestled 9 times. Every time we wrestled, it was either the National Open, the World Team Trials, or the Olympic Team Trials. And so every time we wrestled, it was money on the line, you know, and it was all business. It wasn't just some local tournament or something. And I remember that match vividly, but I remember being worried. I remember hitting a duck under on him, and somehow I flipped him to his back for 3. I remember thinking, how did I just do that? And I just kept going and going. At the end, I tied it. I ended up with some strange leg lace, and I could see the clock, and it said like 7 seconds. And I didn't know if I had enough juice to jump over and turn him, and I didn't know if I wanted to burn the calories and the energy and then have to go to overtime. And I just said, what the heck? And I just jumped over. I got the 2 points. He came out on top with a 1-point reversal, and somehow I won the match. But I was contemplating whether to hit that move or not, and I almost didn't do it. And after the match, I was happy that I did.
On the line
that was...
Go ahead. No, I was going to say we're on the line with Eric Akin, 4-time All-American from Iowa State. We're talking about his Olympic journey in 2000, that match against Stephen Abbas. But going back to the college journey, there were a lot of characters on that Iowa State team, and to me, none was more of a character than Steve Hamilton. You guys had some time together. How did you guys get through those years together, you and Steve Hamilton for 3 years? That had to be pretty crazy.
Yeah, I can't tell most of the stories, probably.
Well, I figured, but give us a bone. Give us something about you and Steve's time together, because that you guys met 3 years together. That's something that this sport will never be repeating again, and as long as we live.
Yeah, when I went there for my unofficial visit my senior year, I was with some freshman wrestlers had met me at the athletic hall or something, and we walked through the football game. By the time we stopped at a few tailgate parties along the way when we walked through all the frat houses and whatnot. By the time we got there, they said, we gotta introduce this guy to Hamilton. He'll love Hamilton. So I meet Hamilton, and within minutes I knew this is where I want to go to school. This is the guy I want to be around.
Yeah.
You know, this is the guy I want being my team captain, and this is the guy that I want to try to match the work ethic of. I could tell right away what kind of person he was, and then I couldn't be more right after I went there. He was a great team leader. He was a great social leader. He was a good friend. And you just couldn't match how hard he could work in the practice room and how hard he could go in a wrestling match. And he was an all-around wrestler. He had solid technique, and he was also a great scrambler. And it was exciting being there. He was a good leader. I liked it.
He also liked to entertain.
Yeah, he did. He did. And just like you guys, I mean, it was a great time for that. And I think, I would assume you still stay in touch with him.
Yeah, he lives in he lives in Georgia now.
Okay.
And he's a high school coach there, but you know, we probably see each other once every other year, like at the NCAAs or something, but it's like he still lives 3 blocks away.
Yeah.
I mean, we're together 5 minutes, and it's just like he never left, and we've been around each other the whole time.
And I think it was similar because you were at Nebraska for a while with Tolly. I would think that you had some connection there with him, and same thing with Tolly.
Yep. Tolly Thompson, yeah, we spent some time together at Nebraska under Mark Manning.
Yeah.
And our families grew close together. Our kids and our wives are like best friends and stay in contact with him. And Big Tolly's a good buddy of mine.
Yep. You got some kids coming up, especially I think you have one that you think is going to be every bit as good as you and maybe better than you. Tell us about what you got going with the Akin genes right now, and who can be excited about to see in the future.
Johnny Akin's an 8th grader. He's coming along, making huge improvements. Just a couple years ago he didn't make it to state. The next year he placed at state, and then last year he won state. And he made some huge strides. You know, he's tech fallen kids that used to beat him and things like that. But, you know, puberty does that to a kid. These young kids are just racing through puberty. One kid gets his muscles before the other ones, and then the other ones get their muscles and pass up that kid. And
right.
And by the time you get to be about 18, it starts to even out. But you can't get too high with the highs or too low with the lows, because that's really what you're doing right now. You're racing through puberty. But he loves the sport, and he has his mind set on D1 wrestling, and he's been a pretty good football player too. And he claims he's going all wrestling. This was his last year of football, and next year is all wrestling. He's going to focus and get ready for college in 4 years.
What's his size?
Right now, he is 5'5", 130 pounds.
Okay.
So
solid.
He's actually a little more than 5'5", so he's about a half inch taller than me, but I'm about 25 pounds bigger. But he's been telling me, he said, "Dad, you got to get down to 135 so we can start scrapping." And I've been saving some.
I figured you've been avoiding that.
Yeah, I've been avoiding all the big kids, but I've been saving my body up specifically for a few years.
Well, I knew that
when
he's gonna get bigger and he can come up to your weight.
Yeah, he's gonna pass me up one of these days. And his older brothers wrestled 189 in high school.
Oh yeah,
and he helps me coach my high school team now. So we got the whole Akin family up there. My daughter is one of the managers, and it's a family affair. That's how I like it.
All wrestling all the time.
Yeah. On the line with Eric Akin, 4-time All-American for Iowa State, and want to just keep talking about this club program because what you're doing is special and elevating these kids. We talked about what it takes to get these guys to the level earlier and talked about what motivates these kids. But as you see the future of the sport compared to where you were, maybe what's the biggest change between how you competed and trained versus how these kids compete and train?
I don't train my guys much different than the way I trained or the way that I was trained by college coaches and stuff even. I mean, it's just a lot of drilling, a lot of conditioning, and a lot of live wrestling. And I just teach them when they get in there into the room, it's time to change your mind over to the focus side. You're not jogging around talking to the guy next to you. You're focused on your goals for the next hour and a half, and then you can talk again, and you can think about something else. But I think competition-wise, these guys have way more competitions than what we used to. And there's way more high-level competitions for all these kids to go to, and college scouts to see them compete. Back in the 80s and the 90s, it was pretty much junior nationals was what you went to, and that was the cream of the crop. And the top 8 guys there were the ones the college coaches were recruiting. And now there's a lot of different events showcase events, I call them, that you can go to and you can have an outstanding performance, and it's going to open some eyes for some guys. I think maybe they're competing a little too much. You know, I mean, even though I'm one of the guys taking them all
what
the
is
time.
the right balance? What's the right amount? Of course, it changes for every kid, but is there kind of a good mix of numbers where you say, hey, 30 matches is the right amount?
Well, 30 matches sometimes takes place in about 6 weeks.
That's true. It's crazy.
But I think it's more about not really about how many matches you're getting, but how many months of the year are you taking a break from the sport and lifting weights and maybe doing another sport and still staying in shape and doing positive things. You got to let your battery recharge. You can't just go 12 months out of the year. The battery's going to go down. If you don't plug it in and let it recharge, then it's not going to run the tool. And I look back at my career, and I used to wrestle all the way up through July, you know, the end of cadets or junior nationals, and I would have 120 matches between February and the end of July, all from freestyle and Greco-Roman. My dad would count them, and every year, you know, he'd say, you had 116 matches. That's like 3.5 seasons. You should be that much better in November. And then at the end of July, you know, I'd either do cross country or soccer or football, or I just kind of stayed away from the sport until late October. And man, when wrestling came back around, I was so hungry to wrestle and not just be lifting weights and stuff and running, and it made me really hungry for the sport. So sometimes I see some of the kids we have that go almost year round. They're craving for their goals, and their craving for working hard goes down.
We have to close out this show. It's been a lot of fun to have Eric Akin on the line with us. Learned a lot from you. Hope it's not the last time we'll get to talk to you, and look forward to seeing you at hopefully the NCAA tournament in St. Louis.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, great show with Eric Akin. For Doug Van Gelder and Eric Akin, I'm Kyle Klingman. You've been listening to On the Mat on 1650 The Fan.
You've been listening to On the Mat, the Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Forward and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
This show is part of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MatTalkOnline.com.